The attic smelled like dust and old paper, the kind of scent that clings to your clothes long after you've left. People murmured downstairs at the estate sale, but up here it was silent. Too silent. I was kneeling beside a half-rotted cedar trunk when I found it. A photograph, stiff with age, edges curled, the surface filmed with decades of neglect. As I lifted it toward the window, a beam of pale light caught the image. My grandmother stood in the center, younger than I'd ever seen her, holding a baby wrapped in a thick knit blanket. The strange part wasn't the baby itself, but the tiny mark on the back of the photo. My name, written in my grandmother's handwriting. But the child in her arms didn't look like me. Not even close. Footsteps creaked behind me. I turned, and my mother froze at the doorway. Her face drained of colors so quickly it felt like watching someone exhale their soul. "Where did you get that?" she asked, voice barely a breath. I tried to explain, but she stepped forward with a trembling hand, eyes locked on the photograph as if it were radioactive. For a second, I thought she might faint. Instead, she whispered something that hit me harder than any shout could have. "You weren't meant to know this." The air tightened around us. Her fingers twitched like she wanted to snatch the photo away, but couldn't bring herself to touch it. Downstairs, the estate sale continued as if nothing were happening. But up here, in that dim attic, something in my family cracked open. I didn't know it then, but this moment was the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew about myself.
I followed my mother downstairs, the photograph still burning in my hand like a live wire. The house felt different now. Every corner, every crack in the floorboards suddenly carried a weight I hadn't noticed before. This was my grandmother's home, the place where I'd spent summers eating ice pops on the porch and listening to her stories about the good years. But looking around now, all I saw were shadows of things no one had ever explained to me. My grandmother, Evelyn, had always been a fortress of routines. Breakfast at 7, garden at 9, silence after 9:30. She loved order, but never warmth. Even as a kid, I felt there was something behind her eyes she didn't want me to see. I'd ask questions. Who are the people in those photos? Why do we never visit certain relatives? And she'd simply smile and say, "Some stories can stay in the past." My parents weren't much better. My father avoided family history entirely. My mother deflected with gentle lies about messy times and losses better left alone. I never understood the tension at holiday dinners, the abrupt subject changes, the looks exchanged across the table. But holding that photo now, all those small oddities finally clicked into place. None of it was random. None of it was harmless. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, my Aunt Margaret stood near the living room doorway. Her eyes swept over me, then dropped to the photo. She didn't gasp like my mother had. Instead, her lips pressed into a thin, knowing line, like she'd been expecting this day. A cold certainty settled in my stomach. Whatever the truth was, it had been buried on purpose. And now that I'd disturbed the dirt, I wasn't sure anyone in this family would let me keep digging.
My Aunt Margaret didn't move at first. She just stood there, blocking the doorway like she was guarding something or someone. The murmur of strangers picking through my grandmother's belongings echoed through the house, but between the three of us, the air was electric and sharp. My mother finally found her voice. "Give me the photo," she said. Not asked. Ordered. I held it closer to my chest. "Why? What's going on?" She opened her mouth, but before she could answer, Margaret stepped forward. "Let them breathe, Anne," she said quietly. "They were bound to find something eventually." My mother shot her a glare. "This isn't your call, and it wasn't yours to hide in the first place." It was the kind of exchange that didn't sound new, not at all. They'd rehearsed this argument for years without ever speaking it aloud. I felt their attention swing toward me, two opposing currents pulling me in different directions. My mother's fear, my aunt's resignation, both of them hiding something, both of them terrified I'd discover it. I tried to steady my voice. "Who is the baby in this photo?" My mother winced. Margaret looked away. Neither answered. The silence pressed in until it felt like the walls were leaning closer. Then my cousin Jeremy, always the one to appear at the worst possible moment, came down the hall. He spotted the photo instantly. His brows shot up. "So, it finally came out," he muttered. "What came out?" I snapped. Jeremy hesitated, eyes flicking toward my mother's pale face. "You should probably ask." "Don't," my mother cut in sharply. "Not a word." That was when I realized something unsettling. Everyone here knew something about my life that I didn't, and they were all trying to decide in real time whether I deserved to know it.
I stepped away from all of them. My mother, my aunt, Jeremy. Needing air, space, anything that didn't feel like suffocating inside their silence. The estate sale crowded thin, leaving only a few people wandering between tables of old linens, tarnished silverware, and photo albums no one had touched in decades. Those albums caught my eye. If they wouldn't talk, I'd find answers myself. I opened the first one on the dining table. Page after page showed the familiar: birthdays, picnics, Christmas mornings, but the deeper I went, the more the layout changed. Pictures were missing. Rectangular shadows where photos had been torn out. Others had faces scratched out, entire sections blacked with ink. My hand shook as I flipped further. That's when I found it. Tucked between two pages was a folded document, brittle and yellowed. Not quite hidden, but not meant to be seen either. I unfolded it carefully. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a recipe or a note. It was a birth certificate. My breath caught. The name on it wasn't mine, but the mother listed was Evelyn, my grandmother. And the date matched a time she would have been too old to have a child. Even stranger, there was a second document attached, a legal form. Adoption papers. Unsigned, undated, never filed. I stared at the baby's name printed neatly at the top. It wasn't familiar. It wasn't anyone I knew, but scribbled in pencil in the margin was something that made my entire body go cold. Ask Anne. My mother's name. Footsteps came up behind me. I didn't even turn. I knew who it was. The air seemed to bend around her. "You weren't supposed to find that," she said. And this time, her voice wasn't scared. It was defeated.
I turned slowly, the document still trembling in my hands. My mother stood a few steps away, her posture rigid, her expression hollowed out. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, as if the truth itself had been draining her for years. "Mom," I said softly, "tell me who this child is." She closed her eyes. A long, pained breath left her chest. "That doesn't matter now. It matters to me." My voice cracked, frustration spilling into the open. "Why is your name written on the margin? Why were these hidden? White?" She cut me off, voice rising. "Because you weren't meant to find that." The words hit the room like a gunshot. Other relatives nearby turned subtly, pretending not to listen while leaning just enough to catch everything. I stepped closer. "You can't keep talking in riddles. I'm done being protected from my own life." My Aunt Margaret appeared in the doorway, arms folded. Jeremy lurked behind her, eyes intense, soaking in every second. This wasn't just a discovery. It was a long-buried landmine finally exploding. I slammed the papers onto the table. "Who is this baby?" My mother opened her eyes slowly. Behind the fear, I saw something deeper. Guilt, and maybe grief. Her lips trembled. "Your grandmother, she made choices. Choices she expected us to live with." "That doesn't answer anything." Margaret stepped in. "Anne, you can't keep shielding them. It's cruel." My mother's voice broke. "You don't understand what revealing this will do." I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. "What it will do to who? To me?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The truth wasn't just about a child. It was about me. And somehow everyone here knew it, except for me. My mother sank into one of the dining chairs, the weight of everything she'd been holding finally too much for her spine to carry. Her hands trembled in her lap. Then slowly she lifted her eyes to mine. Something in her gaze shifted. Not fear, not anger, surrender. "I should have told you years ago," she whispered, "but I was afraid you'd hate me." My pulse stuttered in my throat. "Hate you for what?" She looked at the birth certificate on the table, then back at me. "For lying to you your entire life." A cold numbness spread through me. Margaret exhaled sharply, as if this moment had been waiting behind her teeth for decades. Jeremy stepped closer, almost protective. My mother swallowed hard. "That child," she said, voice barely audible, "wasn't a stranger. It wasn't an abandoned baby or some distant relative Evelyn took in." I felt the room tighten around me, the silence pressing at my ribs. "That baby," she said, "was you." My breath stopped. Everything inside me stopped. "What?" I whispered. She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. "Your grandmother delivered you. She forged the records. She hid the real documents. She told me that if we wanted to keep you safe, your birth had to disappear." My legs threatened to give out. Jeremy looked away. Margaret covered her mouth. I forced the words out. "So my entire identity is a lie." My mother reached for my hand, desperate. "No, you are mine. I carried you. I loved you. But Evelyn, she refused to register your birth. She said they were reasons, threats, people who couldn't know." I staggered back, heart pounding. My life wasn't just built on secrets, it was built on a crime. And whatever my grandmother had been protecting me from, it hadn't ended with her death.
I felt like the floor tilted under me. The world didn't spin. It lurched violently, as if it had been waiting years to throw me off balance. My own birth, hidden, buried, altered. I didn't even know what part of me was real anymore. My mother tried to stand, reaching for me, but Margaret moved first, stepping between us. "Let them breathe, Anne," she said firmly. "You've had decades to process this. They've had 30 seconds. Jeremy came to my side. I didn't know if it was loyalty or curiosity, but his presence kept me from collapsing. My mother's voice trembled. "I didn't lie to hurt you. I lied because I was told it was the only way to keep you safe." I shook my head. "Safe from what? From who?" Margaret's jaw tightened. "From the man Evelyn feared most." My mother snapped toward her. "Stop, this isn't your story to tell." "Then start telling it, because I'm done being the only one willing to say her name." Her. Who was her? My chest constricted. My grandmother had been controlling, yes, but paranoid? Terrified? That didn't fit the woman I remembered. Jeremy muttered under his breath, "This family. God." She shot him a sharp look, then turned back to me. Tears streaked down her face, streaks she didn't bother wiping away. I wanted to explain everything after the funeral, but then you found the photo, and now we're here. I crossed my arms, grounding myself. I need the full story. Not half answers, not protection, just truth. Margaret placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone in this," she said softly. "I've been waiting for the day you'd finally ask." And in that moment, the fault lines in my family became painfully clear. My mother was trying to hold the past together. Margaret was ready to tear it open. Jeremy hovered somewhere in between, watching, weighing, choosing a side. And me? I realized that to uncover the truth, I'd need allies, not just relatives.
Margaret motioned for us to follow her down the hallway, away from the murmuring guests and the heavy air of the dining room. She pushed open the door to my grandmother's study, an off-limits room my entire childhood, and flicked on the light. The scent of old paper and lavender furniture polish hit me like a memory I didn't own. Evelyn kept her real secrets here, Margaret said, moving straight to the locked lower drawer of the desk. She produced a small brass key from her necklace, something she'd been wearing all day without anyone noticing. My mother's voice cracked. "Margaret, don't!" But my aunt didn't hesitate. She unlocked the drawer, pulled it open, and placed a thick envelope in my hands. It was sealed with brittle wax. My name was written across the front, in my grandmother's handwriting. My heart pounded as I broke the seal. Inside were letters, dozens of them, dated before I was even born, and in every one, the same initials appeared at the bottom, R.M. "Who is this?" I asked. Margaret didn't answer. She couldn't. Because my mother spoke first, her voice hollow, resigned, defeated. "Your father," she whispered. My chest tightened. "Dad? But he's right upstairs talking to the appraiser." "No," she said, shaking her head. "Not Robert. Not the man who raised you." I stared at her, uncomprehending. Margaret stepped closer. "Your biological father was someone Evelyn feared, someone she tried desperately to keep away from you." My mother finally said the name, a name she had kept buried for decades. Richard Monroe. The room went still. Jeremy froze mid-breath. I whispered, "Who is he?" Margaret answered for her. "He wasn't just someone Evelyn feared. He was someone the police feared. Your grandmother hid you because Richard Monroe wasn't just dangerous. He was powerful." My mother added, voice trembling, "And he doesn't know you're alive." The world didn't tilt this time. It collapsed. I sank into my grandmother's old armchair, the leather creaking beneath me as the truth settled into my bones. My birth had been erased. My father was a man I'd never met, and one my family had spent decades hiding me from. And now that Evelyn was gone, the shield she'd held up for years had vanished with her. My mother sat across from me, eyes swollen, hands trembling in her lap. "I know you don't trust me right now," she whispered, "but everything I did, everything your grandmother did, it was to keep him from finding you." I looked down at the letters. Threats, demands, reminders of a past that had sharpened itself into a warning. What does he want? Margaret folded her arms tightly. Control, access, power, and Evelyn refused to let him claim any of it through you. Jeremy paced near the window, looking more unsettled than I'd ever seen him. "So what now? Do we tell him? Hide again? Lawyers? Police?" "No police," my mother said instantly. Too quickly, too desperately. That told me everything. This wasn't a problem the law could solve. This was a legacy, passed down in secrets and forged papers. I stood, feeling both heavier and somehow clearer. I'm done running from a life I didn't know existed. If he's out there, if he's dangerous, if he's powerful, fine, but I'm not living in the dark anymore. I want answers, real ones, and I'm gonna get them. My mother rose too, tears spilling again. "You're my child. Nothing changes that." But everything had already changed. My name, my history, my family, all rewritten in a single afternoon at an estate sale.
If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video. And if you want more dark family secrets and disturbing discoveries, subscribe to the channel. There are still more secrets hidden in the shadows of many families that need to be revealed.